Her name was Anuoluwapo, but everyone just called her Anu. She grew up in a small Yoruba village called Ìséyìn, the only child of a gentle tailor and his wife. Life was simple, yet filled with quiet joys. Morning market runs with her mother, where the air held the sweetness of fresh palm oil and the pungency of iru, locust beans. Evenings listening to her father hum old Yoruba hymns as he stitched Ankara fabrics under the dim glow of a kerosene lamp. And Sunday services at the village church, where she dreamed aloud of becoming a teacher one day, shaping young minds and feeling proud years later about her role in their successes. The Harmattan winds would carry the scent of ripening mangoes through their modest compound, and laughter echoed freely. Then the accident happened. An overcrowded Danfo bus lost control of its brakes on a steep hill during the rainy season. The screech of tires and the sickening crash still haunted her nightmares. It was a tragedy all the news media ran for days. Both passengers and unfortunate bystanders lost their lives, her parents among them. At 17, Anu was alone, the world suddenly vast and unforgiving, grief an unwelcome, inescapable burden on her young shoulders. She was passed around for a few months amongst her relatives like a garment holding some unnameable plague, only tolerable for a couple of weeks as some kind of live-in help before being pushed out. Times were hard, and she was nearly an adult anyway. That was what the last distant elderly aunt told her, not unkindly. Her own children were grown and out of the house, and she had neither the strength nor the inclination to nurture anyone. Anu gathered her courage, thanked the stoic woman, and left. She met her first husband, Chinedu, a kind Igbo trader, in the bustling market where she had gone to sell some of her father's remaining fabrics she had held onto for memories. He was tall with warm eyes and a steady voice that promised stability in a chaotic world. "Anu, with me, you'll never walk alone again," he had said softly one evening as they shared roasted corn by the roadside. They married quickly in a simple ceremony and moved to Enugu for a fresh start, the city lights of the coal-rich East feeling like a new beginning. God seemed to be fulfilling her deepest longings for love and family. She got pregnant fast, a baby boy they named Kinechuku, whose tiny cries filled their small flat with hope. For a while, life felt sweet. Evenings of abacha and fried fish and laughter, Chinedu cradling the child while whispering Igbo lullabies. Then fever took the child at 6 months. The helpless nights of watching his little body burn up despite prayers and hospital runs. Chinedu blamed her in his pain. The fights grew bitter. One night he shouted, voice raw with sorrow and anger, "You couldn't even keep my son alive! What kind of woman are you?" and sent her packing with nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart shattered into pieces. She drifted north to Kaduna, chasing belonging in the sprawling streets where different tongues mingled under the hot sun. Husband number 2 was an older Hausa man named Alhaji Sani, a respected widower with kind, weathered hands and a quiet dignity. He offered fatherly protection, the kind she had lost with her own baba. For a while it felt safe. He would sit with her in the evenings on their veranda, the scent of incense and evening prayers in the air. And then she miscarried once, and then again. By the third time, consoling her, he said gently, "Anu, you are enough for me, wallahi. No need to prove anything." But when his extended family discovered she couldn't give him children, the doctors confirming the scars from her losses had closed that door, they called her barren, a curse upon their household. He divorced her quietly one morning, whispering with regret in his eyes, "My people won't allow it. Go with peace, but I cannot fight them." Each new city was another desperate attempt to outrun the shame that clung to her like red dust on her skin. The third husband was a smooth-talking Lagos businessman named Femi, all sharp suits and honeyed words in the noisy streets of Victoria Island. He charmed her with promises of luxury and stability, taking her to fancy bukas where the aroma of sizzling suya filled the air, to galleries he claimed would tush her up.
He would tell her not to hide herself, not to mute her beauty, that he liked a woman who was fashionably trendy so that other men would look at him with envy. She started dressing to suit his tastes, the unfamiliarity dulling slowly in her desire to please him. But he spent her little savings on business deals, then vanished one evening with another woman. She came home to an empty flat, the echo of her footsteps loud in the silence, and found only a crumpled note on the table that simply said, "Sorry." And then came the debt collectors. The fake it till you make it mantra he had lived by had deceived people who had given him loans she now had to pay back. The compound betrayal burned like pepper on an open wound. Anu did her best, working any and everywhere, taking up any job to pay off what she could, because it wasn't all him, she could admit that. But when she had satisfied herself and her conscience, she also left Lagos unceremoniously. Disappointment became her constant companion after that, a shadow that taught her temporariness in the most bitter way. She never held anything with both hands, not a place, not joy, and certainly not a man. She always waited for the other shoe to drop, bracing herself even in moments of fragile happiness, because experience had taught her that good things slipped away like water through a basket. The fourth man was a man from Delta called Akpos, quick with smiles and warmth, but also, she soon discovered, quick with a temper that flared like the country's inflation. They lived in a cramped room in Warri, where the air smelt of frustration and the nearby sewage drains that overflowed when it rained. The beatings hadn't begun all at once. They had started with a lot of shouting. To correct her, he would insist, and then the shoving, first away from him and then into things, the furniture, the wall. Soon it became his fists flying right at her, especially when things went wrong at his welding job, or for any flimsy reason at all. One night, after a particularly bad day, he hit her so hard across the face that she felt her tooth loosen. The choice not to die there was instant and irrevocable. She ran into the dark street with only the clothes on her back, blood warm and metallic in her mouth, whispering to herself through tears, "I knew this one would break too. I always know." By the fifth, she had stopped believing in promises altogether, her heart closed and waxed off. He was a quiet man she met in Kwale, named Emeke, a civil servant whose calm demeanor felt like a safe harbor. He would marry her under native law, he promised, and took her with him to Abuja. They shared quiet evenings of conversation and books, a surreal dream after the turbulence that was Akpos. And she found she wouldn't mind being a second anything. But it truly turned out to be just a dream. When his first wife surfaced from the village with their children in tow and put her foot down about him taking another, Emeke grew mute, and Anu was the one publicly shamed and discarded again. Whispers of Ashawo and homewrecker following her as she packed her few belongings under the indifferent Abuja skyline. Now, she lived in the bustling northern city of Kano, a clear stranger among the locals with her Yoruba features and southern accent standing out like a sore thorn. The man she stayed with now, a rugged truck driver named Yusuf, wasn't her husband. He had never pretended he would marry her. "I cannot promise you marriage, Anu," he told her plainly one night as they sat under the stars near his parked truck, the distant hum of generators and night insects filling the air. "But I won't lie to you either. This is what it is." She knew what she had become, like one man had said after looking her up and down with a sneer. "You must have been used so many times you don't even have second-hand value." Anu appreciated Yusuf's raw honesty, even if it left her empty and hollow. Sometimes she would sit and wonder when she watched other women with their attentive husbands and heard them complain about their loud, stubborn children, what her purpose in this whole twisted, illogical world was. She sold pure water sachets and soft drinks from a simple wooden kiosk near the busy motor park under the harsh afternoon sun that beat down mercilessly, turning the ground into a hot plate. The air was thick with the smells of diesel, the dust raised by the many feet of travelers rushing for buses. People called her that southern woman behind her back, their glances a mix of curiosity and dismissal. She kept her head down, pouring small cups of cool water for customers who barely looked at her, her movements mechanical, always waiting for the next disappointment. One hot afternoon, when most sensible people stayed indoors fanning themselves in the shade or seeking for cold drinks like treasure, a man sat on the rickety wooden bench near her kiosk. He looked tired as if from a long journey, his clothes dusty, yet there was a quiet strength in his posture that drew her eyes. She had watched through the narrow window as he arrived with other men, but they had left him minutes later. She had overheard them talking about going deeper into the market to buy food, leaving him alone in the shimmering heat. He looked at her with eyes full of compassion and said gently, "Sister, please give me some water to drink." Anu paused, her hand frozen on a sachet, surprised by the request. A northerner asking her, a clear outsider, for water. In a place where tribal lines still hummed beneath the surface like unspoken tension, it threw her off. Something in his calm gaze made her answer honestly, instead of brushing him off with the usual guarded politeness. "You, a northerner, asking me, a Yoruba woman, for water? You know we are not exactly friends here in these parts. People talk." But she handed him the cool sachet, the plastic crinkling, and they started talking anyway. He spoke of water that would quench thirst forever, not the kind from sachets or wells that left you dry again, but living water that becomes a spring bubbling up inside you, giving eternal life. She laughed bitterly at first, the sound harsh and disillusioned. "I've been thirsty my whole life, sir. Every time I think I've found water, love, home, belonging, it dries up in my hands. I've run from village to city, always searching for peace, yet always ending up empty." But then he told her things about her life, in quiet, knowing tones. 5 husbands, the child lost too soon, the man she now lived with. Details no stranger could possibly know, piercing through the walls she had built around her heart. Her hands trembled as she clutched the edge of her kiosk, the sun suddenly feeling less oppressive. You must be a prophet. How do you know all this about me? No one sees me like this." He smiled softly, his voice warm and full of grace, and said words that pierced her heart like cool rain on parched earth. He was the one the prophets had spoken about, the Messiah, offering acceptance not earned by perfection or fertility or flawless marriages, but given freely. For the first time in years, Anu felt truly seen, not as the barren woman, not as the wandering foreigner, not as the repeated failure, but known completely and still loved without condition. The acceptance and belonging she had chased desperately in every wrong place, through every shattered promise and painful departure, was suddenly right here, offered by God Himself in the form of this dusty traveler. No more running from city to city, no more bracing for the shoe to drop, no more trying to prove she was worthy of love. In that moment, her weary soul drank deeply, and the living water began to flow, washing away the dust of countless disappointments. She left her kiosk just like that, pure water sachets forgotten and scattered in the breeze, and ran back into the bustling town, her wrapper flying behind her. "Come and see," she told anyone who would listen. Market women balancing trays on their heads, mechanics covered in grease, travelers pausing mid-journey. "There's a man who told me everything I've ever done. Could this be the savior we've been waiting for?" And for the first time since she was a girl full of promise in Ìséyìn, Anu felt clean, whole, and deeply loved. The living water had already begun to flow within her, turning her pain into testimony, her thirst into a wellspring of hope for others.
Thanks so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. No matter where we are in life, no matter where we think we should be, no matter if we've been hurt or disappointed, Jesus is there, the living water, to quench our thirst. to offer us belonging, strength, and unconditional love. Let's come to Him today. See you in the next video.